Welcome to today's webinar, Demystifying Cybersecurity, brought to you by ArcherPoint. If you've joined us today, then we don't have to convince you that cybersecurity should be a priority with any business, large or small. According to Verizon's 2021 Data Breach Investigations Report, 43% of all data breaches involve small and medium-sized businesses. Cyber attacks are a very real and potentially expensive threat, and our purpose here today is to help you put the appropriate safeguards in place. Our presenter today is Matthew Schmider. Matthew has worked as a technical consultant and practice lead for organizations including implementation partners and cloud hosting providers throughout the Microsoft ecosystem for over 20 years. He has expertise in Azure Cloud Management and Migrations, application management, and all things IT. In just 30 minutes, Matthew will share how to get started protecting your organization. So let's get started. Matt, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that introduction, Suzanne, and welcome everyone to Cybersecurity Demystified. I'd like to kick off this presentation with a bit of a level set, just so we can get our heads into the right space here to understand what we're going to be discussing over the next 30 minutes. Before I jump into security, I want to talk a little bit about cybercrime, and it will put everything that we talk about in security into context. So cybercrime is big business. It actually is big business. It is a huge profit maker for the people who launch exploits against legitimate businesses. Ransomware costs in 2020 alone were in excess of $20 billion. The average cost of a ransomware demand in 2020 was $178,000 per instance. Approximately, ransomware is executed against a victim every 11 seconds in 2021. So in 2021, we have infrastructure as a service, we have software as a service, and now we have ransomware as a service. There are groups out there that treat this as no different than any other business out there. This is just what they do. They're very well organized, and believe it or not, they have amazing customer service. They want to get their money, and they will work with you to get that money to them. So with that said, keeping that in mind, this is big business. Cybersecurity. Well, cybersecurity, we've had a lot of technology for many years. The standard point of entry for anybody running a company with IT is antivirus, and firewalls, and VPNs. And we have all this technology. Some of it is really, really good, but we still have attacks. Why does this happen? Well, the bad guys know this technology, and they also know it's also hard to defeat. So why would they want to try to defeat it? Is there an easier way to extract money from a client? So cybersecurity really is not a technology problem. We've had technology for a long time. It's not a technology problem. What it is, it's a technology and people problem. If you think about it, most attacks now are socially engineered and opportunistic. Hackers do not want to spend the time and effort it takes to break a firewall, craft the perfect virus payload, to do any of those sort of things that classic IT was really good at in technology-only solutions. It's a people and technology problem, and unfortunately, the people, all of us, are the weakest link. How do we fight this? Well, we need to make the people part of the solution. We need to make them part of our security solution, and we all need to become more engaged and less reliant on technology-only solutions. One of the worst calls that we get here at ArcherPoint is from clients when they call asking us for help after an attack. And unfortunately, it's so hard, but there's not much we can do after that. We go through the standard checklist, we see if they have some backups, we go through all those sort of things, but really, there's not much we can do after an attack. But there's a lot that we can do before an attack. We need to have a cyber resilience mindset. We have to have multiple layers of security. We need to engage our people. And what we're going to go through today are lessons learned from our clients and ourselves in protecting our information within our business and helping our clients protect their business. So we're going to cover off user education and testing, why it's so important. We're going to talk about password management. We're going to talk about identity management, and we're going to talk about managed detection and response. And finally, we're going to talk about backups. So keep this in mind, it's a cyber resilient mindset that we need to keep in mind with a multi-layer approach. It is a shocking statistic that 90 to 95% of all successful attacks start with a phishing email. 90 to 95% start with that email. What's even more shocking is that 20 to 30% of our users will click on it. So we're not doing a good job at helping our users understand their role in securing our business, securing our data, keeping our companies safe. In order to do that, we need to educate them. We need to make them part of our security solution. We have amazing employees that are intelligent, that are engaged in the business that we have, but not necessarily thinking about security. They're an amazing resource. We need to make them part of our security solution. To do that, we need to train them. We need to give them education. We need to test them. We need to get their spidey senses tingling. Think before you click that email. We don't want to have that click rate of 20 to 30%. We got to get that click rate under 3% in order to be successful at stopping an attack. Again, 90 to 95% of all attacks start with a phishing email, and they can be thwarted by vigilant users. So talking about training and testing, share a personal experience. As Suzanne said, I've been in IT for over 20 years, and I like to think that I've seen a lot of phishing emails and a lot of different attacks, and I thought I was pretty good at finding things and seeing things. I've gone through the training myself here at Archer Point, and we get tested weekly on phishing. Well, I failed a test, and it was a very well-crafted email to me that caught me off guard. I didn't think before I clicked, and I clicked it, and boom, busted. So the email that I got was, I was heads down on a project, I had multiple meetings during the day, and all of a sudden I get a meeting invite. And in that meeting invite is a link to click. And the real kicker on this was, and this was actually when I first started at Archer Point, it was like, oh my gosh, somebody sent me an email, or somebody sent me a meeting, and it started 5 minutes ago. I'm late. I can't believe I'm 2 months into the job and I'm late for a meeting already. And I went, didn't think, clicked it, busted. Back through the training again. And I know exactly why I got busted. But again, it happens quick. It is so easy for a user to get caught with an email or a phishing email because they increase the urgency of the nature for you to entice you to click it. And I fell for it. I didn't think before I clicked. So it's so critical to get our users trained and educated on what a phishing attack looks like, looking for the key features in a phishing email. We really need to get their spidey senses tingling, thinking before they click, and make them part of that first line of defense in our security solution, in our security resilient, our cybersecurity resilient mindset. Password management. IT admins love to make passwords complicated for our users. And I can almost bet you most people that work for a company hate IT policies because in order for us to have a good password, it has to have certain characteristics. It has to have uppercase, lowercase, numeric, special characters, and it has to hit a certain length of characters, typically over 7. If you only have one password to remember, that's really easy. You can figure that out pretty easily and you can remember it. The problem happens when we ask our users to remember a different strong password for every application, website, or service that they go to. Even in their personal lives, they have different banks, they have different accounts, they have different emails, they have different services they subscribe to. How many of us actually choose a different password for every service? How hard is it for us to remember that? I know I was guilty of it for the longest time and changed my ways. But yeah, it's so hard to remember strong passwords, uppercase, lowercase, numeric, special characters longer than 7. It is very, very difficult. Too many passwords, too many services, too long. We end up falling into we use our own heuristics then to try to meet those criteria. And the way we do that is we either reuse the password or we take the password that we know and we add a number 1 to it, or add a 1, 2, 3, 4, or something, or you put a date on it, whatever. We come up with ways to try to meet those complexity requirements. An easier way to do it is if you use Password Manager. That way, if you have a password manager, regardless of what it is, if you have a password manager, all you have to do is you remember one password, which is your master password, and make sure it's a really good one. And then the password manager manages those complex passwords for you. You don't even have to remember them. You don't have to create them. It can do it for you. And when you go to the website or the service of the application, it populates that for you automatically. We need to help our users become better at managing their passwords. Remember, this is a people and technology problem we're trying to solve with cybersecurity. And the way to do that, we got to help our users not only become part of our security solution, but we also need to help them with passwords and identity management, which is coming up in a minute. I do want to break out here from the presentation briefly to show you two things which are, I found, quite eye-opening. The one is, how secure is my password? How many of us have used password as password? That is probably, it is the number one password. So if I enter it here, how secure is it? Password. Instantly cracked. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. Instantly. Let's do password 1. It could be cracked instantly. There are known combinations of passwords out there. The other thing I'm going to do here, let's switch over to this one. This is another eye-opening website, is, has my account been compromised? So let me do my Archer Point email. Good news, my account is not showing up in any breaches. One of my personal accounts, yes, I have a Hotmail account. It's that old. My account has been caught in 2 data breaches. Data enrichment and LinkedIn. Most of us were caught on LinkedIn. Suzanne has graciously let me use her as an example. 14 data breaches. She's been with Archer Point a long time. She's in the sales and marketing team. Lots of accounts everywhere. Our information is out there. So our credentials, so typically the way credentials are used, the user ID and password, our credentials are out there in the wild. Attackers have now 50% of the solution to break into a system because our credentials are out there. So Suzanne's email address is out there. The other thing that we should do is then they go to look at passwords. So is there a known combination of Suzanne's email and a password? So password, we know it's going to get cracked. Oh, the other one, here, let's go see here. Passwords. You can also see if your password's been cracked. So let me do a password that I've used historically. And this is on like a test system or something. So IT guys, we try to get creative. We do P@55W0RD. That hasn't been used. That's good. I use 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, 1.3 million times. Crazy stuff. If I want to go back to how secure my password is, The reason why we like, as IT guys, to have long passwords is it's harder to do brute force cracks against. So we have out in the wild, we have known user IDs, we have known passwords, and they're going to try to do brute force attacks in some cases. So password will fail. But one of the really neat things to do to try to get to a really long password is I like to use passphrases. Password phrases are things like a lyric from a song, or a line from a Shakespeare sonnet, or a quote from your favorite author. Watch what happens when I use a passphrase. Mary had a little lamb. I'm going to capitalize the character, the first letter in each word. Mary had a little lamb. Brute force attack, 6 trillion years. That is crazy. And that's why it's so important to have long passwords. Even though I did not add in special characters or numerics, the length, the complexity of the phrase, and the capitalization of the letters is critical, that a brute force attack cannot take place on that password. Let me jump back into my presentation here. There we go. Identity management. As I mentioned earlier on, usually there's two things to identify a user: user ID, password. Today, that is not enough. I want to stick an earworm in your head. I want everybody to start thinking about a song, The Who. Who are you? Who? I know it sucks. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't try to do that. But get that earworm stuck in your head. It really helps you to put this into context. We need to understand who is logging in. So if somebody is trying to log in with a user ID and password, how do we know it's really them? Well, you look at identity management and multi-factor authentication. Two-layer authentication is what we've had for years, and it doesn't work. It's like, bank card and PIN. It's user ID and password. 20 years ago, that was great. We had very few systems that we'd have to log into. Now, we need to add additional layers to prove who it is that is trying to log in and authenticate to us. One way we can do it is using an authentication token or an access token, something we have. So we start with something we know, which is our password, something we have, which is an access token. It could be Microsoft Authenticator, it could be Google. There's a third one out there, I'm missing it right now. But you start adding these layers, and now we're starting to prove that the person actually logging in is who they say they are. We can actually go beyond that. We can add in more layers of authentication, which is a biometric. So for me to access my authenticator on my phone, I have to prove to my phone that it's me, that it's accessing that application. It wants to see my face or use my fingerprint. The other one that is really starting to get some traction now is identifying where the user's logging in. So if we look at where users log in from, typically, we trust that they're logging in from their office or from home. But how many of you log in from North Korea or Kazakhstan or any of the former Soviet bloc countries to get access to the network? Chances are not a lot of us do that. I know I've never done that. So if you see that your users are trying to log in from North Korea, chances are they're not who they say they are. So it's so important to have additional layers of authentication to prove that that user is who they say they are. And we do that by not only what you know, the password, something you have, access token, something you are, your biometrics, and lastly, where you are. There's another one that you can put in there, which is time sensitivity. So for example, if I log into my computer network and it knows that I logged in from the office, and then all of a sudden there's a simultaneous login from somewhere else, chances are that that is not truly, like for example, if I log in from Toronto or New York or Chicago, and it knows geographically where I'm logging in from, and all of a sudden I have a login from St. Petersburg, Russia, chances are it's not me logging in from Russia and from New York at the same time. Manage detection and response. So we talk, and I'm trying to bring this back here. So we're trying to resolve the people and technology problem in cybersecurity. Our IT teams typically work maybe a 12-hour shift. So depending on the size of your organization, we run 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Well, guess what? The guys hacking you do not work 9 to 5. They typically work evenings, weekends, and holidays. They're not going to follow our schedule. So if you have an IT team that works 12-hour shifts and you have, let's say, for example, an on-call shift afterwards, which is typically, I've done that for many years, where you work a 12-hour shift and you rotate the on-call person, they get the escalations and the alerts and everything after hours. It takes some time to react. Your IT team typically is not sitting in front of a computer 24/7 by 365. They need some help with this. So let's just do a bit of a thought exercise here. It's the 4th of July long weekend. You're on call, and you've maybe had a wobbly pop too many or two, and it's 3 a.m. Your phone rings. There's an alert. Your nav service has stopped. Okay. My production nav service stopped. Well, how long do I have to respond to that? And is it really that important? It's the 4th of July long weekend. My nav service stopped. Okay, I got to drag my butt out of bed, plug in my computer, power it up, connect to my system, see what's going on. Take a look. Yeah, nav service stopped. Restart. What do you do at that point? Go back to bed? More than likely, you restarted a stop service. But how long, if you start thinking about this, how long does it take for you to assess that situation, connect, react properly, respond, and then do you take it the next step? So taking this next logical step, so your nav service started, but now it stops again. Interesting. Now my SQL service stops. Now my web service stops. Now my file server is no longer accessible. What is going on? This is the weekend. I'm tired. It's early in the morning. It's a long weekend. I've enjoyed myself a little bit. Now all of a sudden the sky is falling. What do? You're in the midst of a cyber attack, and it is very difficult at this point for you to muster your team unless you have a very well scripted and planned approach to an attack. You're going to struggle with this. So this is why it's so important to get that extra set of eyes, ears, and boots on the ground to help you react to a problem like this 24/7 by 365. And you can do that through a security operations center where a live analyst will help you and engage, isolate the problem, and stop the spread of the ransomware before it happens. Very important. Our IT teams do need this extra help. It goes very quickly. And this thought exercise was actually something that happened to a client of ours, and it went very quickly. Keep in mind, as I mentioned off the top of the call, average time that it takes to recover from a cyber attack is approximately 16 days. You need to think about that. How long can your business last? Can you last 16 days without access to your systems? The cost to recover your systems is $178,000 on average. It's things you need to think about. Managed detection and response service can help mitigate that problem. The other thing that I do want to mention here that it's interesting to note that 86% of the automated tools will not detect an attack like that in progress. It takes actually a person in front of the system to take a look and go, this is what's happening, this is how I need to respond. The other interesting thing, and I'll bring up another example, the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. We heard about it, gas prices, everything was a mess for a little while there. That attack didn't shut down the pipelines. No, Colonial Pipeline shut down their pipelines. You know why? Because their ERP system was compromised. They could not bill their customers for the fuel that was delivered, so they shut it down. Their ERP was compromised. It was done. They couldn't bill. Surprisingly, something as little as that did that. And the reason how they got in, they did not have a multi-factor approach to authentication. Wide open RDP access, user ID password, logged in, compromised the system, took it down. Held them for ransom. They paid $4 million+ to get access back, but it was a complete disaster. So to carry on our example, when everything has failed, let's say your people have failed, let's say the technology has failed, it has all gone to heck in a handbasket. What do? Well, on the calls that we receive, when we have clients calling and saying, hey, oh my goodness, we're attacked, we're done, what do? First thing I ask is, do you have a backup? And not just any backup. I need to know that you have a backup of your SQL database. Just with that one SQL backup that hasn't been compromised, we can recover your Dynamics NAV deployment fairly quickly. I'm not saying it's going to happen instantly, but that is the key thing for us to recover your system so you can get back up and running and be in business. So you can get back to your NAV, get back to your ERP, to do your billing, do your shipping, your receiving, do all the things that your business needs to do with just that database. And how that database is protected is critical. So most organizations, when they do backups, you have your full backup in the morning or late at night, you do your transaction logs through the day, and you use those to recover typically to, for example, to recover a database that's in suspect mode or to copy your production to test or dev. Great for that. Really bad in a cyber attack situation because the cyber attackers, they know that your backups are the first thing you're going to go to, and they're going to compromise them. Not only they take your systems offline, they will encrypt your data, like your SQL databases. They will also compromise your backups. Your backups are probably the second thing they will attack in an attack situation, because they want that leverage that you cannot go back and recover the systems. So it's very important to have that backup, and that backup can't be a local backup. That backup of that database has to be a backup where that SQL back file is kept offline, out of the line of sight of the attackers. It's the only way that we can recover it. A lot of companies in IT, and I've been working with them too, is they might have a very large virtualized network or virtualized system. You take snapshots of your VMs, you might store the backup image of your VM on a SAN. All that goes to. All of that is attacked and compromised. And even if you did have, let's say, an online backup of your VM, you pull that VM down and you think you're recovered, more than likely you're not. The attack has been executed, let's say, that day, but those guys have been on your system for far longer than the period of the attack that has taken place. The typical dwell time in an attack is 3 months. So if you pull down a backup, let's say of last week, of your VM and you restore it, you've just restored everything back to the point where they can still get access, re-encrypt your data, and this time they're going to make sure that they go back even further trying to compromise you. So it's very important to have a backup that is not necessarily a complete VM. It's critical to have file backups, SQL backups, things that you can recover of your system that you don't have to use from a VM, for example, copying down a VM. More than likely, those tools that the attacker used are still there after you recover. Absolutely critical to have offline, out of sight, secured backups of your critical data. So in summary, just to wrap this up here, I know we're at the bottom of the hour and I don't want to go over too long. I just want to wrap up with saying, think cyber resilience, think people and technology. How can you make your people part of your security solution? How can you help your IT team be part of, better support them as part of your security solution? So we want to make sure our users are part of the solution, part of our security team, training and testing. Passwords, we want to help them with strong passwords. Password managers will help. We want to help them with identity management. We need to prove that the person that's logging in is who they say they are. We want to help our IT teams with a managed detection and response service. And finally, when all else fails, guys, your backup is your parachute. That, I'd like to wrap up this presentation, and in the maybe brief minute here, open it up for some questions. Karen, Suzanne, if you guys want to jump in at this moment, if there's any questions that were typed into the chat.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the great information and examples. Yeah, how do we get started? What do you recommend that we tackle first?
Oh, goodness. Start first. Engage your users. We have a workforce that is ready and waiting for us to help them be part of our security solution. That's where I'd start. Start with the users on your system. Make them part of the solution. Make them engaged. Make them passionate about securing your organization. That's where it all starts. Can't just be technology. It starts with that.
Thank you. I will be sharing the links to the websites that Matt visited today. ArcherPoint would love to help you best secure your organization. Please contact us at info@archerpoint.com to get started. I want to thank everybody for your time today, and this concludes today's session. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching this ArcherPoint video. If you found it helpful, make sure to check out our website and blog at www.archerpoint.com. Additionally, if you have any questions regarding our products, services, or information in this video, feel free to email us at info@archerpoint.com. Thanks.